Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with more Cosmonarchy. There's always more Cosmonarchy. Today we're going to be taking a look at a match on Titan Forge, a map by the Shambler, between Newt and Benno. Benno will be in the bottom left, Newt in the top left. You'll note that this version does actually have the extra mineral field. This guy was lonely, and he was off somewhere else looking for help, and I found him, and I put him here with his friends, so that we could have the same balance on both sides, because apparently Shambler forgot that particular detail. Pranked. But hey, nonetheless, this is a map that you may have seen in March Invitational A, where I made that aforementioned fix. And yeah, it's pretty neat. It's an installation map, as you can tell. Very lot of additional tiles that were placed. And we have ramps. We have actual installation ramps, if you can believe that. Yes, Cosmonarchy has it all, ladies and gentlemen. It also has some pretty interesting things you can do in the game. It has 50 units per race on average. Actually, earlier today, or I guess yesterday now, I invoked the Algoztalisk, which is a new Zerg unit that you can make. So that's pretty cool. I'm sure you're going to see more and more units be added to the game as time goes on. Right now we have Newt going Fulcrum first. Yes, there's no stockade. How could he make a Fulcrum without a stockade? And why are they called those goofy names? Well, you can answer that second question yourself just by looking at the silly names that were there by default. Who wants to make a Zerg Lurker? Wouldn't you rather make a Zerg Lekizalisk? Join us in the future of the RTS where you can make a Lekizalisk instead of a Lurker. But enough about Zerg. They're not here. Quarry on the way. So this is a more economic opener than I think people might be used to from the Terran, but it does mean that, if you feel like you're mostly safe, you can kind of go for something like this, where you go for the Fulcrum. You make one unit at a time. It does take a long time to make those units, and you do chance being overwhelmed by fast, zealots or something, but nothing of the sort here. We've got a relatively slow opener here from Benno as well, as he's going for 2-gate early Drakadon. The Vulture is struggling to find a way to attack the Scribe. Looks like it's going to go for it now. And off it will go. So there's not really any chance for any early pressure between the openers here. And since we don't have anything massively out of the ordinary, then one thing I will point out about Benno is that he really likes the Drakadon. Benno is famous for being a Terran player by default in Cosmonarchy and building a ridiculous number of Mavericks, which is the basic infantry unit, the Marine, but called a different name. He's going to slowly fall behind in workers thanks to the quarry over here. And we actually have some idle workers for the moment as a Drakadon gets caught by a lobotomy mine. And that will mean that the Newt is going to go ahead and focus down that Drakadon, finish the job. And then he'll come back home and order his workers back to doing things. He's got his, I guess with the amount of resources he has, this must be a treasury in the making, because you wouldn't put this out here if you were thinking about anything else. Although at the same time, is he looking for... Yeah, okay, there's a stockade coming. I thought maybe it would be another Fulcrum, but not the case. Legionnaire is starting to be filtered in. I'm so proud of Benno. He's made a unit other than a Drakadon. Like I was talking about the Maverick spam. He kind of builds as many Drakadons as he used to build Mavericks, and they're a very different unit. So it's kind of interesting in that respect. With the stockade on the way, that means we're probably going to see some clerics to support the Blackjacks. Blackjacks have this passive called Wear and Tear, where they take additional damage, and that reduces their movement speed and attack speed. So if you can keep them patched up using clerics or any other kind of repair or healing, it can actually be pretty good for you. And the Scrapyard enables the Blackjack. Vulture is now recalling themselves, changing their positions. And it looks like Benno is adopted to go for a very defensive opener, but this is going to lose him a lot of tempo. He's falling behind in workers, as you can see, and doesn't have a Nexus on the way yet. So thinking about what he wants to do there. Adding an embassy. So the embassy will at least give him another production queue for workers. It's not at all like the Forge, because we don't have upgrades in Cosmonarchy. But when you make something like this, you're thinking, okay, I want to make additional scribes. I want to make the witness so that I can, detect my opponent. We actually have a worker transfer over here. I haven't seen a worker transfer in a long while, but based on the fact that he got the early quarry, it kind of makes sense. You essentially want to keep 2x the mineral fields in your base as far as like workers for optimum saturation. And that, he's pretty close to that. He had 14 when he transferred. So that is actually going to give him a nice jump start to his economy, because after you put your workers up on the initial minerals, when you have 2 per mineral field, the third worker is half as efficient. So you will get diminishing returns. It's just later than you might expect in StarCraft, because compared to StarCraft 1, Cosmonarchy workers are a lot more efficient. We made their harvesting a lot smarter. They do a lot less wasting time. You don't have to mineral boost as much, that sort of thing. In fact, we haven't even mapped out if mineral boosting is worth it. It might actually just be something that sets you behind, which is all well and good from our perspective, from the design standpoint, because even though it's clearly a learned skill, and you can say, wow, it's impressive that players were able to do the XYZ thing, it does feel like, I don't know, just from a tactical standpoint or a decision-making standpoint, it's not really something that I would say is, high value. Now, something I don't know if people caught on to this based on the minimap movement, but Benno actually moved his army up here to clear the mine, because he thought maybe the vultures would have still been here. And interestingly, now he's taking the containment over here. The way that this map works is that this ramp is a very far ramp to start reaching over here, right? So if you don't want to suffer the cliff disadvantage, in Cosmonarchy you don't have any missed attacks. We removed RNG like that. Instead, you've got +2 weapon range when targeting units at a height disadvantage. And it's technically stacked, so if you can ever be like on this highest height level, but also attacking a low ground unit, then you actually get +4 weapon range. You probably won't see that kick in unless it's like a diadem or something. The ion cannon is buildable. But if you don't want to suffer that, then you can take the long route, come up this ramp, and then try to attack from there. We'll see if that comes into fruition, though, because Newt's actually disembarked from his blackjack perch. And it looks like that witness... Oh, look at that. So the shaman, when deployed, obviously is a detector. And now this witness is in a bit of an awkward spot where it's not really able to do too much to get very much closer. But, he can maybe fly over the main. We have a second fulcrum coming down. This stockade, interestingly enough, has been used to create Hurricanes. The Firebat replacement being made versus Protoss is probably going to look really weird to StarCraft 1 players. But in Cosmonarchy, the Hurricane applies a damage over time with its flamethrower, and that damage over time rends armor. So, you look at the Dracodons having 2 armor. Actually, the Blackjacks ignore that, so that particular part is fine. And the Hurricanes are a little bit tautologous in that standpoint, but hey, they're pretty durable, They're pretty, it's pretty possible for them to absorb a lot of initial fire. At least one salvo from all of these Dracodons will definitely be hit. And so there is that to keep in mind. Benno is putting down his Nexus, transferring some workers over himself. He's actually got a little bit more than he needs over in the main if he wants to be fully efficient. He's idling this work. He's got a lot of money in the bank. We'll see what he's thinking. He spends a little bit of it. Definitely could add more tech or at least more production in general if he wants to build like more gateways or something. But this has been a very passive early stage of the game, and Newt is the one to think, okay, I'm going to attack first, right? And so he's going to go ahead and charge forward. The Vultures are going to take the initial hits. And so we'll see what Newt wants to do, because this is the big conundrum. How do you break this in this situation? He doesn't, take the time to put his Hurricanes in the front. That might come back to bite him later. The Shaman can be right-clicked in this situation. I'm surprised Benno didn't, actually. He's going to fall back a little bit here. And there you go. He right-clicks the Shaman. That's going to deal with that. And the Cleric's kind of getting a little bit lost in the sauce over here. Obviously trying to patch up the Blackjacks, keep them at the tip-top fighting shape. He cycles back. He's got 5 Blackjacks left. He can bust this with reinforcements, and he does have some coming. Benno, on the other hand, still has his Draconids on his rally point. Definitely something he can improve in the future. Adding a 3rd gateway, but that's it. I mean, I guess he's adding a 3rd base as well. But now he's going to need to worry about the incoming attack here. And, again, we were talking about Benno having a lot of money. I don't know what he spent it on exactly. I guess it was the Nexus, a lot of workers, a lot more Dracodons, but does need to watch out for this situation. He's going to go ahead and burst down the Hurricanes. Again, the Blackjacks have enough armor pen that the interaction between Dracodons doesn't really matter, but it will help them versus structures, and it will definitely help them in a couple of other positions here. Benno is going to take this fight. I don't know if I agree with this, but now looking at it, it looks like maybe there's a little bit of an overinvestment with the Clerics. So Benno realizing, hey, I can seize upon this opportunity to get rid of the Blackjacks, and that will obviously leave all of the Clerics defenseless. I'm sure a couple of shots could have been pointed a little bit better there, but, back at home, he issues orders to all of the idle workers, gets your macro in play. Benno's been playing StarCraft for a long, long time, part of the No Hunters FFA community. And he came over here, he brought Nablime over here as well, spread the word, and shout out to Benno for winning his group. And his APM actually dropped down to almost 0 while he decided what structure to build. I think as Protoss, you can get choice paralysis if you're not really familiar with it. So Benno has been playing as many games as he can, trying to understand, okay, what units do I make? I actually played some games as Zerg against him, see if I could help prep him versus Sipiak, a very strong player himself. And, you know, maybe Benno, if he can figure out good compositions against that and responses to certain strategies against that, then we can do something there. But as it currently stands, we're actually seeing a bit of a deviation from Newt. Okay, well, I'll talk about that in a moment. But 3 mantles coming down, a pretty big deal. The Witness is going to go ahead and detect that, but the Atlas has been finished. So the Atlas is your tier 2 tech structure as Terran. It means that if you're going for something like that, what you're really after in that context is, can I make stuff happen with, you know, some sort of expanded tech? And Newt has always gone for starports so far. Like, that's basically what I've seen him make most often. Third base almost now coming online. Benno's is done, but his workers are only now seizing upon that. So a little bit low, a little bit slow to the punch there. And in fact, none of our players really going after this other ramp. I mean, it's a little bit awkward. You can harass it from this angle here. So I feel like better positioning from Benno could insulate him against that. But again, the tech coming online here, we've got mantles. They're going to make cataphracts. So looking for that consistent damage there. A Monument of Sin is being made. Now it's halfway done by the time I get to talking about it. This is going to make a Star Sovereign almost certainly. And that is one of the most powerful units in the game. Insofar as it can, you know, you can move it over a base and just clean house over the base. But, I mean, while there's not really anything immediately here for Newt to respond with, if he makes a lot of, I don't know, I guess like Sundogs would be like the operative choice, but that does require an add-on to the starport. It can deal with the Star Sovereign pretty easily. So we'll see what Newt wants to do with this situation. He hasn't scouted it. That's another thing. You can take this Ant Seal, which is a pretty nimble detection unit, and you can kind of fly over and see. When you have detection over people's production structures, you actually see which units they are making and what their progress bar is. So on top of that, you would also be able to see like how far along the Star Sovereign was. And we'll actually see, is it going to be a Star Sovereign? Because Benno has a lot of money. He queues up a bunch of Draconids. Yeah, there's the Star Sovereign. So about like, I want to say 70, 80 seconds from now, that unit will pop out. It does require 1,000 of each resource to make the structure. And so you got to keep that in mind. Looks like Benno thinking about taking a 4th base. So this has been it's so funny. This has been a very passive game, but it kind of shows you that like if you don't harass the Zerg, they can be really, really powerful. If you don't harass a Terran, they can grow to pretty big gears here. If you don't like attack and manage the Protoss, then they can just jump up to the end game tech a lot faster than the other races. So it becomes different depending on what you're looking at. But this fight is still going Newt's way so far. The Cataphracts doing their best to dish out the damage. They have a decent amount of range to compete with the Draconids despite the cliff advantage. Some right-clicking could serve Benno pretty well here. He could get rid of some of the healing. There's the Ant Seal going down. That's a big scalp to take. But the Cataphract's still shelling out consistent damage. That's pretty much all that they have left. Sniping the Shaman. Well, there's one in the back line still, and the Clerics are obviously still up. So it feels like if Benno wants to take this fight and kill the Clerics, he's going to have to do so, kind of sacrificing DPS onto the Cataphracts. We have a Durandal here. That a couple of those wouldn't be too bad. But again, like, sort of throwing your head at the wall there is a little bit awkward in Newt's case, because he could have just flanked around. Benno wasn't even taking a stand over here, which, you know, this is a pretty powerful spot because you can attack in this situation, kind of force the engagement. But Benno wasn't even using that. He's now adding some Zealots to the mix, Amaranth as well. Second Star Sovereign being produced. The first one is done. Nexus on the way. A couple of advanced static defense structures being produced. Durandal gets clothes lined as soon as it walks up the ramp. But the Cataphract's dishing out some pretty consistent damage. A lot of these Draconids are liable to pop at kind of the same time. Here's an Ant Seal for protection. Can absolutely make a big difference here. Ends up getting its energy drained out. Focus fire a little bit awkward here for Benno. He's finally going to kill one of the Cataphracts, but he spread out so much damage, I felt like he could have popped a lot of those a lot sooner. And the sort of like slow attrition war is favoring Newt in this situation. This has just been a total bloodbath in this situation. A goop bath, if you will. The one Goliath doing its best. Oh, he gets away. He gets away with it. And luring those Draconids into their certain demise. Response time a little bit slow here. So we have the Star Sovereign. We have a number of the other units. Is it... Okay, hold on. Well, where's it going? Where's it heading? No, he is not sure yet. I was holding Alt to see if I could track where it was planned to be going, because that's a pretty important unit to keep track of. Maybe he's waiting for a second Star Sovereign. Big worker transfer over here as the Treasury lands. reservoir being constructed to expand how much of Vespene you can get. You can see here Vespene per return 5. We compare that to just an ordinary geyser. It's only 4, so that's a pretty big deal. So he's built some infrastructure over here, but no workers yet. Benno not yet saturating his 4th base. Atreus is on the way. 2nd Star Sovereign is out. But the middle of the map has switched control over to Newt. More and more Masons being streamed on in. I like the witness coverage from Benno. I do think it could be a little bit better. You know, he could have him be a little bit more aggressive, maybe patrolling. If you can keep your awareness on the minimap, you can at least tell that your units are, you know, within range or whatever. Adding a lot of lattices here, so we might end up seeing a lot of golems for the front line. A witness just died, hunted down by the Anciel. So this, with the Star Sovereigns, I don't think that this push can really accomplish anything. But maybe there's an outside chance. I mean, the Cataphract doesn't have any armor pen, and the Star Sovereign has, like, what, 7 armor? Yeah. So you're talking about cutting that damage from 12 to 5. So not ideal, right? I think that's correct. Yeah, okay. I don't know why math is a hard thing for me. So, okay, hey, the Star Sovereigns are dispatching to the top left. This is going to be a bit of a base trade situation. I don't know if the rest of the army can handle the Cataphract stack that we have over here. We've got, I'm looking around to see if there's any other pocketed production. We just have 2 starports making Gorgons. And I guess if they were in enough of a land mass, if you had enough of the Gorgons, that could be a pretty big deal. Now this engram in the back line has been depowered, absence of a pylon. Ground army moving over to see if it can kind of pincer this force, kind of get it stuck as the reinforcements come in. The Masons trying their best to evacuate. We don't actually... Okay, this Gorgon's stuck because of the Gorgon. Rather, this Sovereign is stuck because of the Gorgons. And Benno hasn't realized it yet. So now he's going to go ahead and turn it around. But unfortunately for him, there's a glassing attempt happening over here. He's going to have to really quickly lift these structures so they don't take too much damage. He is going to end up losing the Ministry, it looks like, if he doesn't cancel that Mason. And, okay, the tech is still alive. Gorgon trying to keep it... Oh, unfortunately, it's a little bit too close for comfort. Hey, one of the Star Sovereigns is dead. Meanwhile, the force has amassed. We have another Star Sovereign over here. There's only like the one Goliath. The Goliath is really, really effective versus air. So that's the one unit that you want to try to keep alive if you can. Big glassing attempt coming in, but it's too slow, and that will get sniped in the middle of it. Meanwhile, these forces remaining kind of idle. This force could have engaged and collapsed a lot sooner, and that would have maybe wiped the deck. The Star Sovereign has continued to snipe out a lot of the tech. We got the Star Pad landing. What else is going down for Newt? Just making workers, trying to micro this battle a little bit over here. Another Star Sovereign's about to finish. The Goliath is staying alive as best it can. The Cataphract's shelling out a lot of damage. A lot of the clerics got thinned there, so we don't have that much healing and sustain for this army, but it has pushed him back for now. Back home, because the Atlas stays alive, we see so many starports be added. Try to spend through the considerable bank Newt has. 6 starports, that could be a lot of Gorgons, depending on the situation. This Star Sovereign's still over here, not being micromanaged just yet. Benno trying his best to defend. This is honestly a huge moment, because I think... Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that this push has been held, but I think if Benno was, like, you know, micromanaging his army, he could have brought this down and, you know, done his due diligence to glass this situation. And just gotten rid of that entirely. Golem's now going to occupy this situation. Newt pulling the ceasefire on the operation. Another Nexus being put down to try to replace the 4th. So at the end of that, you'd think that Benno was ahead, right? Star Sovereign is, once again, attacking stuff. Firing away its missiles and its plasma. Ground army pushing away. Newt lost his entire main, except he kept the tech. And he has 7,000 almost minerals, but he's making a lot of Gorgons. So not really a good way to spend his minerals right now. Needs to consider that. Could be captaincies with madcaps would be a great option here. Newt is a player who thinks that bio is ass, so, you know. Trying to use the Gorgon's passive to slow this Star Sovereign down, kind of make it immobilized. Benno should probably just go ahead and kill that. We can see here the damage dealt is absolutely astronomical. 17k on the 1 Star Sovereign, and it's only going to continue rising. Goliath's being created from the 1 Fulcrum that stayed alive, it looks like. Repairing this wounded treasury so that it doesn't just explode. A stockade being added down here. Of all the things to target, the scrapyard. And benno massing up with the remaining forces. Another Star Sovereign is in production. He has another one back at home. We do have a very ever-growing stack of Gorgons, though. We are talking about, you know, being able to make 6 at a time, as long as he keeps his gas income steady. And he does have capped geysers in the natural and the third. He's got double gas here in the fourth. It's not exactly fully saturated right now. Again, 3 to a node. Consistent rules between gas and minerals, so you saturate them in the same way. This Star Sovereign is going to try to glass. It's not going to be successful. Looks like the Gorgons reveal themselves. So what is the response out of benno? He still has 2 Star Sovereigns. They are a little bit scarier when backed up with other units. Diving back over towards the relative safety of everything else, but now the 4th base in jeopardy over here. I should say 5th base, really. But with the main gone, you can call it 4th. 2 stockades now being added. Newt is definitely looking to spend through his considerable mineral bank, but he's going to need way more stockades than that. Adding more and more Gorgons. I'm not sure that benno has what it takes to deal with this Gorgon stack. That's pretty much the main concern for me. But the ground army is also relocating over in this direction, which is probably, I would say, like kind of a mistake. I mean, you would want them out so that they could affect change in the map. You can't really do anything with the ground forces if they're over here, but the Gorgons are going to sweep on through. There's 22 of them. Gotta watch out. Now, the Star Sovereign main cannon doesn't deal splash, but the Atreus shots do, and those missiles that appear radially in front of the Star Sovereign, those also deal splash damage. So a lot of these Gorgons are going to take a lot of damage, but is it worth it if you kill the Star Sovereigns, right? You can see how it's totally frozen right now because of the passive of the Gorgons slowing it down. And yet he suffers almost all of his Gorgons die. Now the last 3 of them will fall. Durandal getting a lot of mileage out of this little funnel over here. Anchor's totally empty, but it took some shots. And the ground army, it looks like benno giving it a little bit more respect than he needs to. Maybe he could just march off over to the top left. See if he could annihilate that particular location. Some of his units continuing to stream on in. The Monument of Sin still producing. The second Star Sovereign being made. First is already out. I mean, it's probably like the 6th or 7th one now. And look at that, a second Monument of Sin being added next to it. One thing benno could learn is the Crucible acts as a sort of souped-up pylon that increases the training time of your units. So if you're finding it difficult to spend your money, but you don't really want to change your composition, and you don't have space for additional production structures, that's one of the things that you can do. For every 4 gateways enabled by powered by a Crucible, you basically have a 5th gateway in terms of production rate. One way to think about it anyway. Now, the Golems have been great as a front line, but they have essentially been thinned out, and so the Dracodons and Atriuses will collapse if descended upon by the Gorgons and the Cataphracts. Although, realistically speaking, I feel like Newt could have a lot better of a time if he had, you know, more Durandals, maybe some Phalanxes in the mix. Certainly something that can attack the Dracodons and dish out some pretty good damage to them. We're finally seeing a situation where the interior is being taken. This treasury still isn't landed yet. But funnily enough, right across the pond, we've got the Nexus over here, so that's pretty funny. Gorgons now once again on the prowl. Single Atreus sort of out in the middle of nowhere is actually going to reveal them. We've got a lot of golems coming in because, again, there's like 5 lattices that were made. A very chaotic game where a lot of units were just kind of like scattered about. Now, these Sentinels are going to be pretty big money for dispatching some of these Dracodons. Here's the collapse in, but the Gorgons have flown over the Atriuses, and those deal splash damage, guys. So you got to watch out for this when you're in a situation with stacked air. More and more units have streamed in from the top. This is a little bit of an awkward position for benno to be in because he can't glass with the Star Sovereign so long as his ground units are over here, and he can't exit from this location without taking a lot of damage. Now, again, the Gorgons taking a lot of splash from the Atriuses. You want the Cataphracts and maybe some other units to be able to deal with that. Yet another base falling for Newt. It doesn't look too good for him, but he is actually adding captaincy. He still has so many minerals, just hasn't been able to spend through it. I'm going to go ahead and try to cycle in a little bit more. 2 Star Sovereigns now taking up the mantle. And, you know, we've got only 12 Gorgons right now on the field. So this area is totally wiped. He hasn't retaken his main in terms of resources, adding another captaincy. The one, you know, gas and ridge, sure, it would be nice if he had access to it a little bit more. I'm not sure if he was harvesting from this. More and more Masons streaming back inward. Adding more captaincies, yeah. Trying to spam out Madcaps. He's added a lot of Sentinels, but those also cost Vespene now. Gorgon's making a dive onto the Star Sovereign. The other one a little bit out of position. There was only the one Atreus, and it wasn't able to splash too much. We actually have Shamans out now. Very, very good and important tool, because they can heal air units like they can heal ground units. So you can kind of put the Gorgon stack on there. Sovereign coming up here is going to see the captaincy. Maybe it'll finish the job of the Atlas, force a lift at the very least. But actually, it's a little bit far away from the rest of the army, and you can see just how fast this will end up falling. It's not even going to get the glassing off. Well, it will. But all that ends up doing is killing a Mason that was producing the captaincy, which is a bit of an annoyance, honestly, and, you know, friendly firing its own Dracodon. So that's going to be it. I mean, that whole area has been held. What an interesting game. We're quickly getting into the meat and potatoes here, where, you know, it's getting down to the wire, I guess is what I'm trying to say. A lot of workers for both players still. Trying to do his best is Newt to hold on to the situation. Only the one Atreus in the south, one to the west. So not really that much splash to worry about. Can really, with impunity, deal with this. The second one is rolled up as well, but obviously that's not going to be long for this world either. And the Cataphracts deal with the stuff on the west. So, all right, Newt has yet again held. Unfortunately, he is going to lose some more Masons on his way out, but yeah, a couple of units just sort of scattered around here. What is back at home? More Sovereigns, more Golems, a couple of Atreuses, a couple of Dracodons. Adding a third Monument of Sin. He needs more Sovereigns. That's what Benno has decided he needs. Adding engrams, but it's a little bit late. The Gorgons could swoop on in. Again, there's been madcaps being made. So, marching on through. This base will be under attack very, very soon. Looks like this treasury at some point was cycled back, or I'm not sure where it was. You can return to the neutral ones at the very least for the time being, as Newt looks to saturate that base again. But yeah, that Nexus is down and kaput. Protoss army moving into the middle of the map. The dead center. This engram is going to be hell on earth for the Golems. We've got Sentinels coming online. You know, there is just about enough resources here for Tier 3 if Newt is feeling frisky and wants to start throwing down diadems, forcing engagements from afar. This map is very compact like that. A couple of Atreuses over here could make life living hell for the Gorgons, but I think you're in that count now that you can kind of swoop in, snipe them, fall back to the Shamans. Definitely want to still be able to use them versus the Sovereigns. Sentinels being produced in the middle of the map is going to help the Terran hold in this situation, but again, producing 3 Star Sovereigns at a pop, you can eventually get to a kind of a critical mass for them. More and more engrams being made. This one Cataphract has been lured to certain death. More Gorgons on the rally. Many, many Madcaps. Some of them have joined in with the rest of the fight. I would like to see the Madcaps engage this army so the Gorgons can kind of swoop in and pick off Atreuses in particular because of their splash. But unfortunately for Newt, he's not really organizing himself super well here. You can see the debuff there withdrawing, fading out. Here comes the rejoined attack. Trying to do a bit of a pincer. There's still a couple of Atreuses over here dishing out some splash damage, but the focus fire was on one of the Sovereigns. Madcaps getting up to their maximum charge, at least doing their best to do so, but now they've got to step forward. And this is where things get a little bit dicey, because a lot of the splash has gone onto these Gorgons. There's not that many of them left. We see a glassing channeling in the back. That's going to force the Madcaps back. Meanwhile, the Star Sovereign over here getting the corpse. The way that this mechanic works is that the units that have left behind corpses, those corpses will be avenged, and as a result, you are going to see some attack speed increases for the other units in the area. That's why that Star Sovereign actually gained a bit of a attack speed increase based on that. Little known fact that glassing will do that. So where do we sit now, right? Like, okay, the data is on the way. It's actually nearly complete. That means we will end up seeing some Tier 3 stuff. Capping the gas in that 4th base. This captaincy was never finished. This Mason lonely over here, contemplating taking the jump, perhaps. A lot of workers made in this game. A lot of workers massacred in this game, mostly Terran ones. Star Sovereigns roving across the map. Coming up to the 30-minute mark, and we still don't have a decided player who is in that advantaged position. We've got so many Madcaps being made. I love to see it. Spending through the bank, keeping that mineral count low. And it's going to be Iron Foundries. So, you know, sticking to mech, where are those even being made? Okay, back closer to the natural. We'll keep track on that. What comes out from there. Would love to see some Penumbras. Could see Aeons. And obviously could see Paladins if we wanted those as well. Madcap standing strong. More and more of the Protoss arsenal amassing, but it's very much Star Sovereign land. Trying to make as many Star Sovereigns as he once made Mavericks. Oh, I heard a cancel. Okay, that was just a cancel of the captaincy up there. That was never to be. Another treasury moving over. I think it's going to take over this gas location. That's going to be pretty big. Remember that minerals deplete and give you slightly less resources. 3 per return instead of 4 once they get mined out. So at some point, you know, like maybe that's why Newt has said to himself, I'm not going to retake the space. But this map doesn't really have the craziest amount of resources. Now, Benno should be thinking about dealing with this in the middle because this is the only active base right now. We're kind of getting into attrition where this base will eventually mine out. And now it's like, okay, just the one in the middle is going to be important. Vassal standing over here as well. Golem's trying to make the engagement. But honestly, these Madcaps are going to be able to do pretty well for themselves. You don't want to really engage into that if you can help it. Let's see what we got. Yeah, we are getting Biotic Bastions and a Future Station. So we're going to have a nice mix of the different Iron Foundry options here. A total of 7 possible units you can make out of that structure. Constantly sharking back and forth with the Gorgons. Oh no! Don't attack your own Star Sovereign. It's going to take so long for the shields to regenerate. Said no Protoss ever. So the thing about the Biotic Bastions, right, is that yes, you can make the Aeons. Yes, you can make... It should be Aeons as well. I was actually going to try the... I think he's probably never been in this situation before. I feel like... Has Newt played a late game where he went Iron Foundry? Because that's another thing you have to remember is these players are practicing and doing stuff for pretty much the first time in a lot of the cases. Here's a funny play. Vassals flying over here in a pretty high amount. It's just Gorgons over here. There's no anti-air. So he can maybe heckle the workers on the gas. He's instead just going to fly away. So get some scouting. You know, figures out like, hey, there's no anti-air defenses over here. Now maybe Newt will think twice about that. Is making a Penumbra. So the Penumbra is kind of like the de facto counter to any sort of stacked air. With enough of them, they actually outrange the Star Sovereign glassing aura as well. And here we go. We can see Benno was thinking about it there. Gorgon's giving a couple of units a love tap, causing that petrification. Vassals sticking with the army. Great idea to keep the Vassals with the Star Sovereigns, by the way. A lot of vital scribes over here, but Benno doesn't really need the mining, I guess. Madcap's trying their best to stay alive. It's kind of like pushing some units back. They're both of them are a little timid. They don't necessarily want to make the trip, you know? It's kind of interesting. Distance mining from that. Capped Geyser. More and more Star Sovereigns. We clearly need more. Many more units at the rally point, not added in. This base being able to get up and running is a real issue. I feel like the Vassals revealed that, but Benno maybe didn't really clock it internally. Nanite assembly coming, another Iron Foundry, another Future Station. So the Tier 3 tech is still increasing. We've got 10 Star Sovereigns over here, guys. We are going to need to see something kind of phenomenal if we're going to see a response to that. You got sort of like the who's who of different Tier 3 mech units, which is kind of funny. It looks like he ends up self-destructing one of the Biotic Bastions, interestingly enough. Adding the Future Stations instead. Probably trying to remember which units do which, even though the command card tells you. But that's okay. In the heat of the moment, you just need something. Capping these geysers. Going to use the Tier 2 caps still. No Tier 3 caps coming. Aeon Penumbra is probably a really scary composition. And with the Madcaps here as well, it's kind of really hard to like engage onto it with anything mid-range. Here we go. Not really any splash damage to speak of with this army, so the Penumbras need to make their move over here. 13 Star Sovereigns, boys. Aeon trying to lay down the law. Any units that die within that field are going to be reclaimed, as you can kind of see happening over there, thanks to the Anticathon. Unfortunately, though, those units end up suffering a very quick demise. Now, these Penumbras do need to be focused down. You can see that exact thing is happening. Some of the units are being collided there, but I feel like there's enough of a death ball at this point that 13 Star Sovereigns, there's even going to be glassing for good measure. Unfortunately, a lot of Dracodons are going to die from that, but, you know, who needs them? Not Benno. Certainly not his replacement for the Maverick or anything. There's a pretty big force still over here, possible for Newt to be able to defend, but I feel like he's he's not really retaliated ever since the wipe in his base, right? So I'm going to unpack his shamans and fall back, trying to get a stack of the Penumbra. He has a Magnetar. Okay, so the Magnetar does have Yamato Cannon, which is AoE. Now taking this middle base here, Benno jockeying for map control. This base will still be valuable. As you can see, it's still very much something that you can keep track of. Fully mining on this gas outpost. Still mostly mineral capped. Probably could maybe add on guild halls to build Olympians instead of the madcaps. They do dish out an unbelievable amount of damage. Especially if you're like Benno and you constantly move your units back. Now, keep tabs on the Magnetar. You can see it pulling units towards it and completely async from the rest of the crew. Unfortunately, the units it pulled were Star Sovereigns, and so they ended up trying to nuke it. I was hoping to see the push come to shove there. When you see so many Star Sovereigns in one spot, it can be really, disconcerting. How do I deal with 16 Star Sovereigns in one location? Well, Penumbras do deal pretty well with the splash. Obviously, Benno is stacking all of his ground units and air units together. Diadems would be really useful in this situation because Diadems can't target air units, but the splash will still hit them. Gas base is going to collapse. I kind of feel like Benno is tightening the noose over here. Engram's being put up here to deny the treasury that's being built on location. Newt doesn't want to give up just yet. He hasn't really leveraged his full power over here. Might be thinking about adding some Phoboses because he is relocating the nanite assembly. We'll keep track on what's going on there. A nice little pocket glassing happening over here, but the captaincies end up popping away. Mostly a zoning glassing, and the Hadron is being added to that nanite assembly, so we will end up seeing, Hippogriffs versus ground perhaps, but I think more likely Phoboses. We need to see more of a number than that, though, and really he never ended up reacquiring his main. That's definitely a bit of an oversight since it does still provide you with Vespene, which is the main limiting factor for Newt right now. And now, here we go. Benno is forcing an engagement, forcing a decision from his Terran opponent. 17 Star Sovereigns doing their best to dish out unforgettable amounts of damage. But the Penumbra stack is real. The Penumbra stack is very real. And you can see some of the health from these units is really falling very quickly. Captaincy's actually kind of trying to do their best to block stuff, but is it going to be enough? There's the glassing force. Got to watch out for that ascension mechanic. But still, the Penumbra's doing so much damage. He has thinned the herd massively. He still has more Penumbras on the way. And I don't know if he's noticed just how much damage he's really done. One more shot actually would have done that Star Sovereign in. Like, Newt is very close to actually breaking his opponent. And he's even forced Benno to retreat. Now, the problem is he doesn't really have much of anything. This base still mining, that's a pretty big deal. Can start reestablishing more bases. You see the APM of our players a little bit far cry from where it was at the start. Getting exhausted, done in by the 40-minute game. And, again, it's a little bit more passive and like, tentative than you might expect a game to be. But our players are just sort of, like, figuring out what this novel situation looks like for them. Benno's adding a 4th Monument of Sin. He's added 8 lattices. He's got so many workers in the middle of the map, he's totally forgotten about it, could transfer them over by this point. Now remaxing, resetting his situation, reasserting some element of dominance. The Magnetar is online. Again, you can use the Penumbras to dish out unforgettable stack damage. And there's not really any like Zealots or Amaranths or anything that are here to show the way, so to speak. Penumbra's sort of trying to jockey back over in this location. Benno is going to use the Vassals to pressure this base. That is going to do the trick. There's not really any anti-air defenses, so Madcaps are going down. That's going to force another engagement in mid. We got to keep in mind, though, the Star Sovereigns are kind of stacked up together, and a lot of them were wounded over there. He's forced a glass, but that's not going to reach anything anyway. So finally, the Sovereign stack is clear. I was actually looking back over here to see if he had any others boldly trying to take that base. A lot of Masons got massacred, but he didn't attack the gas harvesters, which, it's kind of hard to know what your opponent has in terms of resource bank. But if you can just snipe their gas workers on the way out, that's always pretty effective. Just finish the job overall on the worker count. A Phobos is operational and online. More and more Penumbra being added to the mix. This Nexus now getting hit from the side. Cliff advantage favoring versus ground. Doesn't apply to air targets, so worth noting. That Nexus not canceled, but not that it really matters. Our players have a ridiculous amount of minerals, both of them. Yeah, this is something where it feels... I still can't believe Benno hasn't noticed this yet. This is something where it definitely feels to me like if You know, Benno drops a lot of his, you know, a lot of gateways or grand libraries or something in the middle of the map and just like rallies a bunch of Amaranths into his opponent. He probably would have, you know, won. Maybe Newt would have won a lot more powerfully, a lot faster had he been able to do a little bit more. You can see here Benno trying to fall back, but no, that's going to be it. I mean, I don't know what Benno can do versus that when he doesn't have the infrastructure to deal with stuff like Penumbra. Their attack is friendly fire. If you get on top of them, they're going to damage themselves way more than, you know, the measly healing a cleric can provide. It's just going to be way, way more than what the Terran can deal with in that situation. But there is no thing to get on top of them with. We don't have any Didax for stasis either to try to like lock out half of the army or anything. You know, there's a lot of tools available for Benno that it feels like he's not interacting with too many of them at once. His bottom right base is going to be contested, slowly eaten away. He never kept any of his geysers, funnily enough. I'm looking around at that. I'm not sure if that's a lesson that he's learned since this game, but definitely something to do for increasing the gas yield. Might have been the difference maker here. Newt trying to retake the gas in the middle of the base, or in the middle of the map, rather. Technically, here we still have this base mining as well. Something else that Benno could probably use is he could make artisans out of the embassy. Now we see a pylon being added to try to expand the horizons here for Benno, but I don't know that it's going to be enough, right? Maybe he can go for another counterattack. I do think that the game is winding down. We've got a Hippogriff versus ground. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. There's no counterattack actually happening. These Penumbra in the middle of the map could get focused down, actually. Golems trying their best to engage. Could have drawn some fire while the rest of the force moves in. You got to watch out, though. The glassing, it's not going to work out really in your favor. Instead, he's going to glass his own Golems, and you know, Newt just walks back. Just kites back to deal with the front line. Not at all the situation that Benno wanted for himself. And yeah, Newt is figuring out, wait, I can actually snipe you from outside the range with the Penumbra. You know, that's a pretty huge breakpoint for him to keep in mind. These Penumbra have destroyed the Nexus that was allowing for more efficient harvesting in that area, in the dead center. We've got a Mason for combat. There you go. You can see the friendly fire in action here. And actually, you know, there's not really that many Penumbra left on the field, but there's just nothing here for Benno to fight with at this stage, right? That's the real big problem. He could throw his scribes at him if he ever looked at that base. I've been trying to track his camera if he ever looks there, and it's just I want to know what his reaction is in that situation, but it doesn't look like it's enough. Star Sovereigns now trying to do what they can to hold off the horde of Terran mech, but it's just not going to be enough. And I feel like Benno is probably going to have to call GG. It sucks to lose a 40-plus minute game, no matter who you are. But this one was, let's just say this showed up a lot of different tech options for the Terran. And unfortunately for Benno, he didn't really show as many. And look, this is what I mean when I say he could attack with the scribes. Like, one of those Penumbras just got stomped on immediately, right? Well, gonna force down the production here. No Crucibles to enchant the speed of production, so these Monuments of Sin will not finish their Star Sovereigns. That's not even really the main threat. I would be trying to depower the Lattices if I was in Newt's shoes. But yep, that's going to be it. GG is called, and it looks to me like Newt has done it. Crazy long game, and Benno just can't believe it. He's like, what? I glassed your main. Surely that should be enough. In fact, it was not enough. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed this cast over of Cosmonarchy. Newt will be trying his best to prove up his play and continue to sharpen up against the Class 1 opponents that he's going to be facing in the next event. Benno will be looking to qualify into it. We'll keep you guys posted on that. Nonetheless, I hope you appreciate the level of improvement and the idea that these players are, you know, practicing for the first time. In the case of Benno, practicing for the first time of Protoss. But in the case of Newt, you know, he's back in action. You know, he's getting back into it, shaking the rust off. And I like that. I like to see that. So we will be seeing more from these two very soon. And if you want to see more from many others, stay subscribed, you know, drop a like, whatever, put a comment in, tell me your favorite Cosmonarchy player. There's a good one. I know mine, but can you guess it?